was looking at this U.S. geological site, usgs.gov, and this was the gold for 2010 in reserves, 51,000 metric tons, and it shows it here on the top. That is in metric tons of gold, unless otherwise noted. So there's 32,150 troy ounces in a metric ton. But I was looking at this reserve number. While it is very true that reserves are a function of price, actually the key word is what is economically extractable. That's actually what the reserves consist of. So it is a function of price, but it is also a function of new mining techniques and better, more efficient mining techniques, or where something, it could even be roadways or improved. It could be a lot of different factors that would lower the cost enough that they can extract the material, whether it be oil or gold or platinum, palladium, silver, or whatever. I want to look at these numbers on the palladium, and because this does not really go into palladium, it just lumps it all together as a platinum metals group, which is several things: platinum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, iridium. I don't know, probably missing one. But this is actually not in metric tons, it's in kilograms. So if you want to put it as a metric ton, you take 3 zeros off of it. So that's only 195 metric tons produced in 2009 for palladium, and 178 metric tons produced in 2009 for platinum. But the number to really pay attention to here is the Russian reserves. And if you take the two countries of Russia and South Africa, between the two of them, they account for about 85% of the palladium and platinum produced in the world, worldwide. And of palladium, most of it comes from Russia. Russia does, and for platinum, most of it comes from South Africa. So in the case, if we go on to 2010, just remember this number, it's 6,200 tons or 6,200,000 kilograms. We go down to 2011, you can see that number has been reduced by about a sixth, and that is because Russian reserve estimates were revised to reflect current data published in the Russian literature. Now, it doesn't really divide out how much is reserves of palladium, how much of reserves is platinum, or whatever. But most of the palladium actually was coming from Russia. So we can assume that, if you're looking at this, maybe there's a, 15-year supply. I really don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell from these numbers because it's all mixed in here. But you notice that the vast majority of reserves are in South Africa, and South Africa is it does produce a lot of palladium, but it's more platinum than palladium. So there's one other article in here, and I want to point out there's a few other reasons, because you got to look at the entire picture. I know these are sales pitch things from these mining things and everything. They're talking about palladium prices could skyrocket, but I think this does make sense. They're talking about the Russian agency Gokran, the body in charge of selling Russia's infamous palladium stockpiles. And they're infamous because they tend to dump them on the market all at once to drive prices up and down. They know what they're doing. Announced they would drastically reduce stockpile sales to 145,000 ounces next year, a more than 400% decrease according to the article. It's really hard to tell what the information is because they're very secretive about what they do. Berlin also stressed, and this is the guy, Anton Berlin, North's head of analysis and market development. Berlin also stressed the importance of Goran's announcements, a rather big one considering Russian stockpiles provide a majority of the global palladium supply. He said that a source within the Russian Ministry of Finance has been quoted as saying that current stockpile sits at 800,000 ounces palladium, And yes, that should reduce sales to 140,000 ounces next year, but come 2014, the sales number will be zero. So, it seems like there's going to be a price spike in this material. Now, the one thing I keep thinking about, and I'm going to get back to this article, but the one thing I keep thinking about all the time is this keyword, demand destruction. And this was really talking about, this is from Wikipedia, but it was talking about, demand destruction in case of peak oil theory, case of like price of gasoline, the sale of cars. But it's just like anything. If you have a price point where it gets too high, they start finding alternative uses. And it's something to consider in any material, even silver. So, I think in the case of silver and gold, they're going to go up a lot because of a panic out of the fiat currencies because of the debt that's being created by all the governments. And in the case of palladium and platinum, or especially palladium, it's a unique animal. Everything's unique. But there's something else that this article alludes to where I think the demand for palladium is going to stay very high. They're talking about Norls, which is the Russian company, is having trouble mining in Zimbabwe. It's got a large undeveloped precious group metals hotspot, and as for South Africa, the global leader in platinum production, power issues and political trouble will keep annual growth to 2%, not the 5% they hoped. Now, do compare that with most of the palladium and platinum is used in automotive production, and automotive production, not so much in the United States, but globally, is increasing about 7% a year. Now, the Japanese automakers will get back into full production in 2012. And here's another key thing, I think. Since oil is going to be going up so much and causing, a price increase in gasoline, you're going to see a lot more hybrid cars. So hybrids use more PMGs, platinum group metals, as well, up to 20 to 30% more. Now, if there was being a hell of a lot of hybrids being sold, and if you add that to the new emission controls for off-road vehicles that have to require catalysts for control emissions, the demand for palladium is going to go up a great deal. But the key thing to really watch for is demand destruction, because they're using more palladium in place of platinum because of the price difference. Now, what happens if palladium goes up to the same price of platinum? I mean, that's really the game that goes on in any metal or any commodity. If the price gets too high, they will start finding alternatives around it. That's also a word of caution even to put out on silver as far as a fundamental industrial use. But in the case of silver, it's more recognizable as money. So, it has major advantages in that respect. But I do think there's going to be a major price spike in palladium too, probably even more so than gold, because the rarity is actually far beyond gold, and it is now recognized officially as a precious metal. It just had the big disadvantage is that the market's small, and you just couldn't go to, in the case of a currency crisis, you're not going to be able to walk into an average merchant someplace and probably get a good price for your palladium in exchange for some goods. That's really what's wrong with it. But it is a good long-term play. I think it is. As far as the Fibonacci, I think the last peak price with 2001 was $1,085. It was over three times the price of gold at that time. And keep in mind that was because they believed that Russian stockpiles were depleted. Supposedly, Russian stockpiles will be depleted in the very near-term future. So, that's why I almost think the price of palladium could go beyond gold, because it did do that the last time when they had these rumors about Russian stockpiles. But yes, there is disadvantages and advantages to any different metal there is. And, in the case of silver, it has a recognizable money function for many, many centuries, whereas palladium has not even been discovered till more recently in the 1800s. So but actually, the next price point you might want to consider, and I probably would dump the ETF around $1,100 if it gets up that high. That's probably going to be a pretty long-term hold to get up that high. I think. Oh, I would guess, I don't know, a year. I would almost think a year before it even gets up this high. But looking at what they're doing with quantitative easing coming up around the corner, and how the central banks are all acting in unison to save the euro. Now that story just broke today, and considering what they're probably going to do in general, just like we know they're going to keep printing money. So I think it's going to every commodity out there is going to be in a bullish mode in almost every respect, as long as they can keep the economy going. But as far as palladium specifically, I still think it's a very, very good bet, and I was curious about these numbers, but what really piqued my interest was also the fact that if you look at the Russian stockpiles, how far they were reduced, and that is your number one palladium producer. So you really don't know what the heck's all in the rest of these numbers. It's not that great, but really there's two places where most of the platinum and palladium come from: Russia and Russia and South Africa. And you can see those are the big reserves, and the Russian reserves have been drastically reduced, drastically. So any kind of political instability in South Africa could drive the prices up. Any kind of problems we have where Russia decides, we consider this a strategic metal, we need to keep this for ourselves, the West, and then you're going to be getting everything from the U.S., Canada, and Australia, and that is not going to cut it. That's not going to be anywhere near enough, because when you're looking at these reserve numbers, I mean, yes, there's a reserve there, but you also have to look at the rate of production, how fast they can bring it to market, and considering there's not that many countries where these metals are. If one of those areas has a problem, you can really see the price spike like crazy. Now, in the case of silver and gold, there's a hell of a lot more different countries where it comes from, so it has an advantage in that way. So, you're not going to see a supply disruption because of some kind of political turmoil in one country. Whereas in the case of South Africa, if there was political turmoil in that country, we would see the price of palladium and platinum skyrocket. And that could happen. It does have quite a bit of political turmoil. So but word to the wise, I could just say that if you do see some hellacious price spike in that metal, you might want to consider selling it. And I know there's a big thing about the fiat cash and everything, but sometimes it's smart to take the cash at certain points, and if you see if it looks like it's a situation that's not going to be permanent, there was a revolution or something in South Africa or something that's closed down these mines, if you want to consider that scenario, that would be a good time to probably just sell the metal when you see it jump up to reach some price point, because what's going to happen. Things will calm down and the price will come back down again. But considering what the ratios are on these things, they're ridiculous. I mean, you're talking when platinum is less than gold and yet far more rare, and you got a ratio of 1.13, where gold is 13% more than platinum. To me, I think these industrial metals are a much better buy, especially the palladium.